To this new episode of RecAd Savvy, a webcast where we address some of the trending issues in talent acquisition and talent technology. And today we're going to talk about the importance of pay transparency in online recruitment advertising. And my guest today is one of the real experts in this particular area. Name is Mike Woodrow. He's the president of Aspen Tech Labs. There we go. I'll get that out there in a minute. So, Mike, welcome to the virtual stage.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having us.
Nice to have you here. So, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and Aspen Tech Labs.
So I'm Michael Woodrow, president and founder of Aspen Technology Labs. I'm a career executive recruiter, so I've been in the recruiting space since 1995. So like Peter and some of the other people in the industry, I fondly refer to us as the gray hairs in the industry. We've been around for a little while. But in 2007, we started Aspen Technology Labs, and originally, and still currently, we have a job board solution called JobMount. So if someone wants to launch a job board, nursing jobs in Orlando or engineering jobs in the US, et cetera, we have a job board platform for that. Pretty quickly after that, in about 2009, we got into the jobs data business. And what that means is some of our customers said, hey, we've got these job boards, but we need jobs. We don't have too many customers, or we're just getting started. Can you help us bring some jobs into our job board? So we have a job scraping business called Web Spidermount that is far and away the largest part of our business. We currently collect jobs data from about 135,000 companies every day, and we collect direct from the company. So all of our jobs data is real time. It's direct from company. The jobs haven't been enhanced or duplicated or replicated or kind of messed around with as job boards do. It's all original content. So we started doing that for our customers, and then also for other job boards in the industry. We've got about 300 customers now that we provide jobs data to every day. And a couple of years ago, we realized we've got this large pool of jobs, and there's a lot of information as part of that pool. So we built a product called Job Market Pulse. It sits on top of the jobs data that we have, and we provide insights on things like salary transparency and who's hiring and in trends in the industry on jobs. So that's our business. The other thing that's interesting about our business is my former partner was Ukrainian. So we built a large team of people in Ukraine. So we currently have 45 people in Ukraine, and the rest of our team's in Europe and in the US. But obviously with everything that's been going on in Ukraine, the war, it's been a challenging time for us. So we're super appreciative of AWS and Starlink and a lot of things we're appreciative of. But that's another piece of our business I think not everyone knows, but kind of unique.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it. You mentioned that you've collected a lot of salary data, so you're the perfect guy to talk about when we address pay transparency. But if you do a browser search on the web for that particular term, you see a lot of different descriptions. So what, in your view, is the right definition or a good definition of pay transparency?
Yeah, so so I was thinking about that too, and so I took the slightly newer approach, and I asked ChatGPT what ChatGPT thought salary transparency was. If anyone's interested, do that. Just go to ChatGPT and ask what salary transparency is, and they give you a really nice 2-page summary of what it is. But in its kind of true sense, it refers to the extent in which details about employee compensation are disclosed in an organization. So, that's kind of the broad term. When we talk about it, we usually talk about it in terms of hiring, right? In terms of job postings. That, our business, we're all about job postings because, we collect 8 million job postings, every day. So it is a little broader than that. Salary transparency goes beyond the job posting to the actual organization. Do they disclose salaries amongst the organization? Do they get feedback? Do they how do they manage that process? So salary transparency is pretty broad. And another thing I say about salary transparency, and it's kind of interesting, is it's not the only thing that we're moving towards with transparency. there's a lot of transparency issues kind of in legislation that are going on and other things. Like one is all hospitals and insurance companies currently by law have to disclose hospital prices. How much is a Band-Aid? How much is an MRI? How much is a kidney transplant, et cetera? All that information is publicly available. So, we focus on our industry, but it's really a trend across industries that the world wants information to be more transparent.
Got it. So, yeah,
a little more detail, because I could go into a little more detail. Providing salary ranges, disclosing salary ranges, those types of things. Being honest about it, because anyone could disclose, oh, the salary is between $20,000 and $50,000. Well, okay, that doesn't really do very much for people. But if you can really kind of hone in on it, it's interesting. And as a small business owner, we've got 60 people in our company. You struggle a little bit as a business owner with salary transparency. But really, the bottom line is that it's a good thing. Candidates want it. Companies, as we saw with the United Auto Workers strike, companies like GM and Ford can afford to pay more and can afford to pay a living wage, to their people. And so transparency, I think, moves in that direction. I mean, there's certainly some other issues we can talk about, but it's a good thing in my opinion.
Well, I would agree. And whether you call it pay transparency or salary transparency or wage transparency, we're generally talking about companies being open and honest about how they compensate people. But at least as I read the literature, there is no single application of pay transparency. It's different in every company. And as you pointed out, there are levels. You can release all salary information publicly. I guess that's sort of the top of the heap. But then you can, as you indicated, release pay ranges for specific positions. And other companies simply provide a description of how they determine the pay for various positions. So it's all about, I think, being as open as your culture, your finances, your business strategy allows with regard to how a company compensates individuals. As you indicated, it's increasingly becoming the law. California, New York, Maryland, even some cities like Cincinnati have implemented regulations about pay transparency in job ads. So in your view, what's the status of these regulations? Are we going to see more? And if so, what are they going to look like?
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see more. And, one thing that's interesting, it's a little bit crazy because we looked at some of these stats just recently, but just the 4 states that have salary transparency is required in job postings. That's California, Colorado, Washington, and New York. California and New York being the most recent ones in January. But if you just take those 4 states, 22% of the people in the United States live in those 4 states. Crazy, right? So almost a quarter of the people. And as Chris Foreman said at a conference I was at recently, the automakers use California emissions laws, the standard for cars all across the United States. So it stands to reason that as a few more states, Illinois is coming on in 2024, that's another large state. As some of these larger states come on, it'll push it even further because companies like Wells Fargo and Starbucks and Walmart operate in all these states. And it's not that easy for them to have it in one state, have salary transparency in one state, not in another. So what we really see is it's job postings. Job postings are required to have salary information in these states. I'm not really sure how far it goes past that, how far they have to disclose things to current employees. The other thing that's interesting is I think where it impacts people the most is at the lower levels. Someone's making $10 or $12 an hour, but then they see a job posting for $16 or $17 an hour. That's a pretty big deal to someone who's on the lower end of the wage scale. And really in recruitment advertising and in hiring, that's where really all the money is spent and all the hiring occurs at those, I don't want to say entry level, but retail, warehouse, those kind of jobs. It's just a huge part of our industry, and that's where I think it's important. Truck drivers, et cetera, those types of things.
So why do you think states are doing this? What's pushing the drive for these regulations?
So, I mean, if you see the states that are doing it, it's the more liberal states. I mean, Colorado is still kind of purple, but the other states are, tend to be are much more liberal, and so they feel like it's, in my opinion, they feel like it's better for the employee to know what the wages are, and it'll create. Think about it, like for California, and if it drives wages up by 10%, that drives tax revenues up too. So it's a tax revenue enhancing measure. Although I don't think that's the reason for it. I think they think it's the right thing. It's the right thing for candidates.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think that what may, in part at least, be behind it is pay equity. This is a way for us to finally deal with the wage gap. Women have been paid less than men for the same work and the same kind of job for years now. We're still at only, I think, 83, 87 cents on the dollar. So these laws shine a light on where there is these inequities internally, and also, as you were saying, help individuals understand where the opportunity is. And we'll talk in just a minute about what the benefits are. In fact, why don't we just move on to that? So we have agreed on a definition. We're seeing more and more regulation. You think that trend will increase. What are the benefits that a recruiting team gets if they can convince their employer to be more transparent about pay?
So I think from the company side, the important thing to realize is that candidates want this information. And I've seen some data, I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen data that application rates increase if there are salary data there. Google is really pressing for it with their Google schema. If the salary information is there, it gets higher status in Google. So you get higher application rates. And from a recruiter standpoint, I'm a career recruiter. I don't want to talk to someone who's already making twice what the salary is for this job. It's just a waste of time. The candidate's probably awesome, or maybe is a great candidate. But then if you don't realize until later in the process that the person's already making 2x, then it's a waste of time. So from a recruitment standpoint, you get more candidates, but you get better candidates because they understand what the salary range is. And we talked about the equity issue too. Because I've been doing this for so long, we always ask candidates what they're making. We always did that. What are you making now? We knew we had to sweeten it to get them to come on board. But as you're talking about women and minorities, there's no way for them to catch up if you take that approach. So the transparency allows people to take a jump and kind of start to fix some of those things over time. So that gets back to the candidate benefit and kind of the societal benefit of it. But really, from a recruitment standpoint, you're going to get more and better applications. That's what the data is showing.
In fact, World at Work did a survey in 2020, and it found that 67% of the organizations that it surveyed thought that pay transparency was important, but only 14%, less than 1 in 5, were doing anything about it. Yet, when you survey job seekers, 85%, almost 9 out of 10, are more likely to apply, as you were saying, if pay is transparent. Now, unfortunately, some companies have defined pay transparency as a range, but the salary range for this job is somewhere between $30,000 and $55,000. Well, that's not pay transparency. That's just kind of fudging the reg, if you will. But if you're open and honest about it, then the other thing that happens is that you really help your brand, your employment brand. Your company is seen as being more honest and more candid and more thoughtful, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it's just something that companies will get more comfortable with over time. They have to do it. They're going to fix some of their internal equities that they have. And over time, it'll work out and it'll be a significant benefit. We haven't talked about it yet, but in terms of the compliance is interesting. Do you want to cover that for a minute?
Sure, go right ahead.
So, in Colorado, let me make sure I got the right stuff here. Indeed is saying, here's a couple things. Indeed is saying that about 50% of job postings have salary information. Now they make up some of it. They're not talking about that. They're saying that 50% of their job postings on Indeed have salary information included in the job posting. They have a lot of small one-off jobs that they get. We don't see that level of coverage in our data. We've got about 5.6 million jobs as of yesterday in our U.S. jobs database. I think the U.S. government discloses they publish like 8 million or something like that. So there's just lots of small employers that we don't have. But we feel like we've got a good representation. We've got all the Fortune 500. We've got thousands of companies. 30% of U.S. job postings that we see direct from the source have salary transparency. So we're at about 30%. But if you look at some of the states, Colorado's at 64%. So even though there's a law in Colorado and it's been in place for more than a year, still only 64% of Colorado job postings have salary. Washington, it's just 60%. California jumped up really quickly. They're at 58%, and New York's at 57%. So the states where there's requirements, they're running right around 60%. The states where they're not requirements, it drops off pretty quickly. You've got Oregon at 37%. Some of the smaller states, Vermont, Wyoming, those states are in the 30s, and then it drops off below that. So you're going to see something less than 20% in the states that aren't mandated.
So there is the compliance issue, and then there is the enforcement issue. Does anything happen to these 30, 40, 50% of the population of employers who don't comply?
You're starting to hear a little bit about it, but I mean, I don't have any specific, anecdotes about it. We certainly have a compliance product that we're marketing to the states to say, hey, we'll tell you who's disclosing it and who's not. There's similar compliance products for, the Airbnbs that are breaking the rules and other types of things like that. But we haven't cracked that yet, and I'm not sure, where the enforcement is. Kind of the same thing on that hospital and insurance mandates that I mentioned. There is some enforcement, but it seems pretty spotty. So I think that's going to be something that comes along later.
Gotcha. So we've agreed, I guess, that pay transparency has a positive impact on pay equity, has a positive impact on the propensity to apply among job seekers, has a positive impact on company brands. So what's the downside, if there are any? I mean, some have said when I was doing my research that pay transparency reduces candidate pools and it precipitates workforce envy. Do you agree with that? And are there any other downsides?
I think the downside is really that for the companies that aren't the good actors. I mean, if you want to take care of your people, and you disclose the salary transparency, it's going to be a benefit to you. If you don't, it's going to cost you, I think, in the long run. The other thing I was just thinking about is the other downside. I don't really have much, on the downside. It's just the companies that do it are going to benefit from it.
So I saw that I read an article by a person who was opining that salary transparency actually can hurt you because it enables your competitors to poach. They know what you're paying for X position, so they can sweeten the deal a little bit, make themselves more competitive, and poach some of your employees. So that was one downside that they listed. And the other was that, you and I talked about the fact that there are various levels to pay transparency. And there's a certain amount of complexity and an administrative uh, infrastructure to having a good, equitable, and sustainable pay transparency program. So it doesn't come without a cost in that regard, if you will. So nothing's going to be perfect. So you have to be aware, I think, going in that pay transparency can cause some dissension within the ranks, because if you're promoting a position in the marketplace for a salary range of X and you're paying X minus 100 internally already, then you're going to get some dissonance. It would seem to me.
Yeah, so I think, as a business owner, I think the way to do it, if you're a recruiter and you're trying to figure out how do I convince my company to do this, I think you pick a piece of your business that you can manage it a little bit easier. Like, let's say you're running a car dealership, put it in place for the guys who wash the cars, or just start to put it in place in an easy way and just kind of ease your way into it. Because I really don't think there's going to be that many problems over the long run. If you're a business owner and you've got a high quality employee and you have to pay more to get people to come in, over time, I just feel like you're okay with paying that person a little more. And if you had a conversation with them, hey, we have a business here. We want to take care of you over the long run. Here's what we're doing. I think if you start small, you can manage your way through that.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense.
Yeah.
I think, you have to kind of understand your level of transparency that you're comfortable with as an organization. Are you going to divulge, 100% of your pay structure? Are you going to just provide a range for certain kinds of job postings? What exactly are you comfortable with from the C-suite on down in the organization? And then, I'm an old Hay Group partner, so I know we used to do a lot of compensation and benefits consulting. And one of the key issues is, what's your compensation target? Are you going to pay at 50% of the market? You're going to pay at the top of the market? You kind of need to know where you are and where you're going before you start to implement pay transparency.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think especially the better firms, and we kind of all think we work or have the better firms are going to benefit. And so why not take advantage of the firms that aren't as good and showcase some things that are going to attract the best candidates to you.
Yeah.
I really think it's a win-win. It's a win for candidates. It's a win for society. And over the long run, it's a win for the best companies.
Any thoughts about, mistakes that employers can make as they start to think about implementing pay transparency?
I'm just kind of thinking about it from the recruitment standpoint. I said before, just, take it slowly. And if you think about it too, there's a difference between Walmart and Target hiring store staff and an engineering firm hiring, 5 engineers. There's a difference in that process and how that works. So, just kind of understand where you fit in that process. And I think a range is fine for a small engineering firm that has a few people. You want to make sure, when we hire people, we look at someone, we're like, hey, is this an up and comer? For this job, okay, we're going to pay that person a little less and let's bring them along a little quicker. Or is this person coming in with all of the skills for the job? Okay, we're going to pay them more. So I think a range is fine for positions that kind of really require that. But if it's a cashier, or if it's whatever, you just go for it on the salary range, on the salary transparency, and just show it, and deal with that. That's kind of how I would look at that. Um, and I think also, if you're a recruiter, just work your way up the management chain. Senior people want to hire the best people. They want the best people into the firm because they know that that's good for the company and good for the shareholders, good for everyone. So if you're a recruiter, just work your way up and convince people higher up in the chain that this is the best way to go. And I wouldn't use the reasoning, hey, this is the law and this is coming and we need to get ready for it and all that kind of stuff. I would sell it and say, hey, this is what's happening. These are some things that I'm reading in the industry, the benefits, and let's test this. Let's do it. The other thing that we didn't talk about today, and it's a little bit off to the side, but it was on a presentation I've seen recently on salary transparency, is quick apply. If the recruiters out here, if you guys have the opportunity to use quick apply rather than having someone fill out some long application on your ATS, you're also going to get better candidates. So if you couple a quick apply with salary transparency, you're going to get really higher quality candidates, and it's going to make your job easier. Sorry, that's a little aside, but
no, that's fine. But I think it's important to realize that pay transparency for job postings doesn't limit its impact, the impact of that practice, to talent acquisition only. It's going to permeate your culture as a larger organization. For example, if you're implementing pay transparency, then all of a sudden your hiring managers are going to get a lot more questions about compensation. And it's been my experience that hiring managers are absolutely clueless when it comes to dealing with those kinds of questions, using the right vocabulary, knowing the company's philosophy, and being able to express it. So it seems to me that it's not just as simple as hanging a salary range on a job posting and then kind of washing your hands saying, okay, we've been compliant. You really need to think about the larger impacts of that policy to make sure that not only can you implement it, but you can sustain it. And that's really the key, it seems to me, to a high-performing organization, is sustained transparency.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think also it brings up a good point that sometimes talking about salary is a little bit taboo during the recruiting process, or it used to be. And so it's going to come earlier in the process now. So I would say to recruiters and to hiring managers, don't get stressed out about that. The new generation of people, or the younger generation, are talking about that issue earlier in the process than maybe people like us were accustomed to.
Well,
So,
I did appreciate your saying earlier that we were the gray hairs, because I don't typically qualify in that category, but yeah, fair enough.
yeah.
So, Mike, as always, this is a 30-minute show. It's always too short. We could clearly be talking about pay transparency for another couple of hours. But for those who want to know more about Aspen Tech Labs, those who want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. I'm just Mike at Aspen Tech Labs, or come to our website, aspentechlabs.com. We have a lot of information out there. We have a quarterly jobs report that comes out. I think it's coming out next week for Q3. And that's a free report that kind of tells you what's happening in the industry, where's hiring happening by industry, salary transparency issues, a lot of things like that. So that's something that is definitely worthwhile to check out. And you can find us through the website and our salespeople, et cetera. We are big on free trials. So if there's any jobs data you're looking for, or any insights you want, we're happy to put something together for you and show you data that you think is interesting. And then hopefully we can create a longer term relationship. So thanks, Peter.
Well, thank you, Mike. Do appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for attending this episode of RecAd Savvy, the webcast that's about all things recruitment, advertising, and marketing. I hope we'll see you for our next show. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.
Goodbye, everyone.
That's it. And we're clear. The show has stopped. People can't see us in the back end, but the show was finished for everyone else.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Yeah, if there's any other, things you guys are looking for, as really, for you guys, we're all about the jobs data. So if there's any jobs data insights that you hear about or something, we're always happy to throw a report to you, or hey, you heard about this, or there's some podcast coming up that it doesn't make sense for me to be a part of, but you'd like some data for it, just let us know. We're happy to participate.
Well, and if something jumps out of your reports on a quarterly basis, just have Sarah reach out, because every week we publish industry news. We'd be happy to feature the report and that particular issue that intrigued you in one of those weekly reports.
Great, cool. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Right,
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.